Thank you, Pedro. And it's great to be speaking to my Spanish friends once again. As Pedro mentioned, I've been working with WCN and the Spanish enterprise clients now for maybe 3 years, I think it is. And what's fascinating is when I first started to come to Madrid and Barcelona, the whole concept of employer brand really only resonated with one or two enterprise clients, and now it's become very much mainstream, and so it's very excited to be part of that journey. As Pedro mentioned, we'll try and limit this presentation to maybe 20 minutes to give us as much chance as possible for questions. So do think about some questions as we go through this presentation. Hopefully you'll all take something from this, and we will then try and answer those questions once I have finished. So hopefully that sounds all good for everyone. So the idea is I'm going to try and share with you the various researches we have conducted over the last few years, and particularly these last 6 to 9 months. We'll talk about the conversations we have had both with employees and with job seekers, and what we have coined the rise of employee voice. We'll share our employer-focused research, and finally, I'll leave you with some actions and next steps on how to share your authentic employer brand story. Each month, 55 million job seekers visit Glassdoor. They're all looking for that right next opportunity for them. And as we know, there is a 5 times stronger reach through the Indeed Glassdoor partnership. And I guess just to make everyone aware, Indeed and Glassdoor are both owned by the same parent company. So Glassdoor is Indeed's sister company. So with Indeed and Glassdoor, we have well over 250 million job seekers looking for that right job on our platform. That is brilliant for job seekers. It's amazing for job seekers because we've got all these jobs and all these companies that they can do their research on. But it's also great for you, the employer, because each and every one of those job seekers gives us some insights through data as to what they're looking for and why. And this is very, very powerful information, which we're going to share with you. In fact, together, Indeed and Glassdoor reach well over 80% of online job seekers across various different industries in the US, for example. Now, I will say, when we think about the Spanish market, we certainly aren't 80% of online job seekers, but we're still a significant number, and it still gives us that very rich seam of data in which to help us craft our employer brand story. So you can tell your authentic brand story to job seekers across both sites, whether it's Indeed or Glassdoor, reaching an audience of candidates that are searching for that right opportunity. And as I mentioned at the start, we are very much in the age of the employee voice. And what's interesting is that today that message comes directly from those employees, those workers, in real time. And their experiences are being shared real time with other job seekers, with consumers, and with their co-workers alike. So this is very different to how it used to be. In fact, it's no great secret that in 2020 and 2021, there's been massive disruption on people and businesses. Employers, companies have been forced to navigate a rapidly changing environment, with HR responding to issues from the global pandemic to social injustices to employee health and well-being. Just one of these challenges would be all-consuming in the best of times, yet we've had 3 massive challenges in which we can say is obviously not the best of times. Pre-pandemic, many employers were established with very steady recruitment plans, and they often had great office perks. Then employees began challenging the status quo norms, and they went out to search for more. All this change has impacted how people want to work today and what they expect from you, the employer. If you were going to build a company culture today, would you build that culture around a foosball table, a fancy cafeteria, or a barista coffee station, as nice as those things are? Or would you focus on supporting remote teams and employee well-being? If any of your organisations are like Indeed, it is probably the latter. We absolutely did have those wonderful cafeterias and those endless cups of delicious coffee. But now, all working from home, the focus from Indeed has very much been on employee well-being. Another question, would your diversity goals stop once you met your hiring goals? Or would you continue with inclusion as a value? Work is personal, and it is so personal now more than ever. People want to feel a connection to the work that they do. The job a person takes on, the person that he decides to do, often feeds into their own personal narrative of how they see themselves. The work very much is a part of us. Employees overwhelmingly now expect very flexible options. They want to work with diverse teams, and they want to feel real purpose and a connection to the organisation. These are some really big percentages of job seekers and employees responding that they value flexibility, diversity, and purpose. All of them over 70%. Which is why nearly 80% of employees in our research show that they're currently thinking about or searching for a new, different, or better opportunity. There is a lot of job seekers out there thinking about change, even in a pandemic. And there are so many touch points throughout that job seeker's journey, from when they first discover an opportunity to when they actively begin considering offers. Now, this screen that we're looking at now is a very, very simplified, in fact, it's an oversimplified timeline because we've condensed it into just a week. But it's meant to show that employers have the ability to reach people wherever they are on that journey and bring to them helpful information to help them make those more nuanced decisions throughout that process. And employer branding plays a role throughout this journey. Our goal at Indeed and Glassdoor is to help employers better contextualize the stages at which they can meet job seekers to drive the most influence. Which leads us neatly to employer branding, because employer brand is the lever that is changing the recruiting and talent world. By our measure, if someone doesn't think employer brand matters these days, the primary reason is because perhaps they just simply don't know what it really is. It's an unknown unknown. So why don't we first try and define it? Why don't we try and define what employer branding is from our perspective? Employer branding is the craft of building a company's reputation as a great place to work. It's a strategy of influencing others to think really favourably about working for you. Now look, the term employer brand is certainly not new. I was talking about it 10 years ago when I used to work for Monster. But, and this is important, social media along with major shifts in social and economic trends, has radically changed how employer brand is brought to life. An employer brand used to be a very curated and controlled message. Today, that message comes directly from candidates and employers in real time. And their experiences are being shared with job seekers, co-workers, consumers, and even with investors. In fact, let me tell you a story. This is a story just from a week ago. It was something that one of my very close friends shared with me, because his father, unfortunately, has had to go into a nursing home. He's in the last months and years of his life. And when choosing a home, he and his family used employee reviews on Glassdoor and Indeed to find out what that care home was really like, to get underneath that glossy brochure. Because after all, they didn't want their father and husband going into a care home where the workers were unhappy in their day jobs. But back to our job seekers. Why invest in employer branding for them? Candidates with choices actively seek out information that they can rely on. They use this information to help them make more informed decisions, just like my friend did when he's thinking about his father. The majority of job seekers research company reviews when deciding where to apply, and are likely to apply to a job if the employer actively manages its employer brand. The concept of an employer brand has grown exponentially without any frameworks to build upon. It's kind of grown organically and by itself and very, very quickly. Towards the end of 2020, Glassdoor set out to create a framework to help our partners better understand their own level of sophistication and provide them with opportunities to enhance their employer brand. We wanted to understand what makes an employer brand great and what separates the leaders from those still that are finding their way. To help us, we spoke to employer branding and talent acquisition experts at nearly 900 companies, both large and small, and across many, many different industries across the US, the UK, and Canada. Our study showed that despite all the challenges of 2020, there is a deep and ongoing commitment to employer branding and cultivating a company culture to improve that talent acquisition. If anything, in 2020, it became turbocharged. Our research shows that employers' focus have shifted as their employer branding efforts become more sophisticated. In short, they move from focusing on short-term tactical hiring to long-term employee experience. To simplify things, we've created these 4 stages of employer branding to better represent where most employers are across their focus, their strategy, and their sophistication. Employers in the starting stage are primarily focused on hiring and attracting enough qualified candidates. And let's face it, that in itself is tough. But their employer brand is typically undefined because they are tactically focused on just getting enough talent into their business. Employers in the developing stage have assessed their hiring challenges and are now starting to take the first steps to address them. They are still pretty early on and they are still in need of some guidance. Employers in the growing stage, however, are making a progress on formalizing their employer brand, and they're identifying key changes they need to make to improve hiring and employee engagement. In fact, they have probably invested in talent attraction strategies and retention strategies but they've yet to kind of close the gap between the two of them. And I suspect there's quite a few companies on this call who might fall into this camp. Lastly, employers at the leading stage are building upon a compelling brand promise and delivering it through their employee experience. So they're delivering their brand promise through the workers that are already working for them. They are continuously sharpening this core strength for the good of their employees and the health of the company. So we're using this framework to better meet employers where they are, with guidance and solutions that help them become an employer of choice. And at both Indeed and Glassdoor, every single day, we are working with companies that are starting on their journey, are developing their strategy, are growing and bridging that gap between retention and attraction. And fortunately, we also get to work with some leading companies in this space. Which is why I want to ground us in a key insight. This is important. The experience of your employees becomes your employer brand. It's about those people working for you today, because they are the ones that will tell the story. And we can't disentangle the two, even if we wanted to. So let's talk a little bit about sharing that authentic brand story, because we can help you build your employer brand through transparency. Building a strong reputation requires transparency and authenticity with your core audience in mind. To build relationships, no matter how transactional, you need information in which to make decisions. Your employer brand is in a large part to help job seekers and employees alike answer this very, very simple question. Why should I work for you? Haven't we all asked that question at least once in the past? And to answer that, you need to consider three things. Your current reputation as an employer by listening to people and understanding sentiment. By reaching out to job seekers with your brand story. And finally, influencing those job seekers by sharing the experiences of your employees. These three considerations are strategies to help you build your employer brand to attract and hire quality talent. The first consideration, as I mentioned, is listening. So you can truly understand your reputation as an employer. This is critical. This is the first step. And Glassdoor and Indeed makes this easy through rich insights that help employers better understand how their employer brand, as it is currently perceived. So we've got to start with what we've got. Perceptions about what it might be like to work for your company live in the minds of individuals. And simple psychology tells us that perception is reality. So to attract the right talent in this market or any market, employers have to move beyond simple curated taglines, bulleted out benefits, and images of open workplaces. It might have worked in the past, it doesn't work today. All of this combined suggests that your employee value proposition, partnered with the experience of your employees, is essentially your authentic employer brand story. The second consideration is reaching job seekers to help them learn about your mission, your culture, your values. And of course, you can share anything else that you think is important to share. Through the Glassdoor and Indeed partnership, we feel we reach an unmatched audience across industries that our collective clients really care about. As you may expect, earning attention is a critical ingredient in driving consideration. And the first step in doing that is reach. If they can't hear you, they can't make an informed decision about you. And once you have a job seeker's attention, then it becomes your turn to shine. This is an example from LiveRamp. They have over 1,600 candidates visiting on Glassdoor alone every single day. So it's no surprise that they've managed to grow their employee base to 1,200 employees just this year. This is hyper growth, folks, but it's still eclipsed by the number of unique and individual job seekers that are visiting their company page each and every day. And our goal is to help you share your story with that right audience, because we know the impact it has on job seekers. Finally, the third consideration is influence. You can try and move job seekers from learning about your open roles to wanting to actually compete for them. That's the place we want to get to, where job seekers are competing for your roles. That's why we're building solutions that help you tap into the employee experience and share their voices with others. Our research tells us that job seekers are hungry for more information about the employee experience. And we kind of know this to be true. If we just think about our purchasing decisions in our own life, whether that's on an e-commerce platform like Amazon or eBay, or perhaps we're on a travel site like Expedia or Booking.com, we are always trusting the judgment of others, of fellow travelers, of fellow consumers, before we make that purchasing decision. And job seekers are no different. They're hungry for that information from people that are already working at that company, just like we're hungry for information from people that have already visited that hotel we're thinking of staying at. And your employees therefore have to be some of your best resources for this authentic storytelling. Here's a couple of examples from Dell. Dell produced a video centering on employees sharing very real testimonials of what it's like to work there. Because employees can be amazing advocates, and video is a captivating medium to which to influence your audience, particularly a younger audience. You too can also feature employee voices by using quotes and images. It's really very, very simple. It's not a particular heavy lift. It's a camcorder, it's taking some screenshots, and it's transposing their voices into words. It's not that difficult. Quite the opposite, in fact. All you need is simply transparency to bring your culture to life. I'd like to finish now on this lovely quote from Christian, who is the CEO of our sister company, Glassdoor. He says, "Our company vision is a world where transparency enables everyone to make the right decision to find a job and a company they love. We believe that together, employers and employees can make that possible." Thank you for taking time to listen to this webinar, and also thank you to our friends at our sister company Glassdoor for crafting the majority of this guide, which I think is truly excellent. Because it's a guide that is grounded in first-class research, data, and insights, and real-world examples from companies that we all know and love. And look, also full disclosure, we're learning these best practices too, and we're learning them with you, the companies that we speak to. And these best practices evolve as we commission more and more research, collect more data, glean new insights, and continue to work with clients. My commitment, our commitment is simple. We will share these learnings to anyone who wants to take this journey with us. Thank you very much.